Hi, and welcome to the first installment of online lessons for Omaha Performing Arts' Jazz Academy. These lessons will be broadcast every Saturday morning at 11 o'clock, and we'll have one for the next 5 weeks covering a variety of different topics about playing jazz, working on improvisation, all this type of stuff. So for today's lesson, we're going to talk about the number one thing you can do to improve your playing. You might think, well, that must have to do something with learning more about chords or music theory or learning a lot of tunes or transcribing. These are surely all important things for us to get better at our instrument, but the biggest thing we can do to improve our improvisation is improve our rhythm. All the music that we play in jazz, whether it's swing, funk, different Latin styles, are all based on different types of dance music. This was music for people to dance to. And while we're not going to talk necessarily about how we dance today, we do want to connect with that dancing sensibility and remember that rhythm is what we want to respond to first as improvisers. Today, we're going to talk about swing. Now, in any style of music, there are going to be certain rhythms that work better than other rhythms, and swing is no exception. There are going to be rhythms that feel more swinging than other ones. Let's look at a few examples. So, example one, first I'm going to start by playing the less swinging version, and then I'm going to play the more swinging version. So let's check it out. 1, 2, 3. Now the more swinging version. 1, 2, 3. Cool, let's look at another example. Here's example 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now the more swinging version. 1, 2, 3, 4. Cool, so check out example number 2. Now there is a downbeat on beat number 2 and beat number 4, so we think, man, that must be swinging. I know in jazz I have a strong beat on those 2 downbeats. However, if we move that note to the offbeat of 2 and 4, it's going to feel more swinging. Let's check out another one. Here comes example number 3. Here's the non-swinging version. 1, 2, 3. Now the swinging version. 1, 2, 3. Now I added a few extra offbeats there. That is going to help it lead to feeling a little bit more swinging. Now there's a million variations on all these, and many of these rhythms actually exist on a spectrum, meaning that we might have a totally not swinging rhythm on one side, kind of a medium swingish in the middle, and then something that really swings on the other side. So let's check that out. So first we'll start with the non-swinging version. This is example 4, 2, 3. Now a very similar rhythm that's a little more swinging. 1, 2, 3. And now our probably most swinging rhythm. 1, 2, 3. Now, there's no list somewhere of the rhythms that swing in jazz. Most of this we get through listening. Listening to the great players. For me as a trombone player, I really like to start with J.J. Johnson. A great example track is off an album called Live at the Opera House, the song Billy's Bounce. He does a great job in his solo of taking a simple rhythm and elaborating on it throughout the solo. For trumpet players, I really like to go to Lee Morgan on the Art Blakey tune Moanin'. It's on the same album. The album is entitled Moanin'. In this solo, Lee Morgan plays a lot of complicated rhythms with lots of triplets, a little bit of double time, but it still all feels good and in the pocket. He never is off of the beat, so to speak. For saxophone players, a good example there is think about Lester Young. Lester Young played with a really great sort of laid-back approach to rhythm, but it was still swinging, still in the pocket. So there are many approaches that you can take to making your rhythm strong, and it's about listening to great examples and finding out what works best for you. Okay, so since we said there's no definitive guide about where we can find these right rhythms, let's talk about some guidelines that might help you to figure out, rhythms that are going to feel good and sound swinging. A few things to think about. Number 1, we want to avoid too many downbeats in a row. That doesn't generally lead to a swinging rhythm. If I take that same figure and change it just a little bit to have some offbeats, it's going to feel a lot more swinging. So just a subtle change will get us there. Next, we want to think that rests are just as important as the notes we play. So if I play nothing but eighth notes, I'm probably not going to have very much swing in there. But if we add a few rests, we'll suddenly feel a swing. True, I was playing swung eighth notes, but if I add a few rests, feels a little bit more swing. Now, I didn't add long rests in there. Those were just some eighth note rests that enhance the amount of offbeats that we were feeling. That's what really makes those rests important. Finally, we want to think about articulation. Articulation is just important when we're playing as a soloist as when we're playing with the ensemble. So if I play something with very little articulation, it's not going to probably sound too swinging. I played all those notes the same. I could play the same thing and change the articulation. Maybe think about how I might play it if I was playing in a big band. Think about some house top accents. Dot, dot, do, dot, dot. It's going to feel a lot more swinging. Cool, so let's put all this in context in a song. I'm going to play the first 4 measures of the standard Autumn Leaves. I'll put the music up here in all your different transpositions. The first way is going to be not very swinging. I'm not going to follow these guidelines. Lots of downbeats, not very many rests. The second way, I'm going to follow some of these guidelines, and let's see if we can hear the difference. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now the swinging version. Now I had some downbeats there in the last 2 measures. Da, dot, dot, do, dot. But again, I thought about articulation, and that really helped me make those downbeats feel good and in the pocket, even though they did not fit one of our original guidelines. Now the question becomes, how do we work on this to get better at rhythm? The first thing we can do is work with a metronome. The metronome has got to be your friend as a musician, and as an improviser is no different. Now, if you haven't worked with a metronome at all, it's probably going to be a little bit challenging at first, possibly a little bit frustrating. It's very unforgiving. Now here, I'm using kind of an old school metronome. You can use one on your phone for sure. That's probably how most students access them in the modern world. I've got my tempo set to 100 beats per minute. That's a real kind of middle of the road tempo. And to start with, that's probably where you need to be. If you haven't worked with a metronome very much, you're going to need to do kind of some foundation laying of doing some scales, maybe some simple exercises, so that way when you go to playing more complicated things that are maybe a little more related to improvising, you're going to feel like you can play with a metronome confidently. So we're going to start with just an easy scale exercise. I'm just going to play B flat major with the metronome. Now if that's feeling good, maybe you move to eighth notes. From there, maybe you could do some arpeggio exercises. I'm going to play the first 4 measures of a B flat blues, and I'm going to play the arpeggios that go with that with the metronome, almost as if I'm playing a bass line. Again, as you advance, you can move to eighth notes. Cool, so those almost don't have anything to do with actual improvisation. Yes, maybe some of the music theory components, but we're really not improvising yet. We've got to be able to do those foundational things at a high level so that when we go to improvise with the metronome, we'll feel confident. From there, I might move to working on some vocabulary or short musical phrases. We'll talk about this a little more in a future lesson. I'm going to play them with the metronome. I'm also going to move them through a couple of different keys in order to be able to access them in the different songs I might be playing. So here's my idea. Now I'm going to play that with the metronome, and I'm going to move it through a few keys. Now maybe an F. Then maybe to E flat. And finally, we're going to take all this stuff, put it together, and we're going to work on soloing with the metronome. Trying to see if I can think about the things we talked about today. Not playing too many downbeats, having some rests, trying to incorporate good articulation. Staying with the metronome is the key. And maybe if I have to simplify a little bit to stay with the metronome, I want to think about that. So here we go, let's give it a try. I'm going to play a chorus of B-flat blues. Great. So hopefully that gives you guys some ways you can work on your rhythm and some ways to practice these concepts individually that will help you to improve your playing. Rhythm is the biggest thing that will make your playing feel more authentic to jazz. Even if we get right notes, right chords, we know the songs, if our rhythm isn't working, we'll never feel like authentic jazz players. So thanks for checking out this lesson. I hope you'll tune in next week at Saturday at 11 o'clock.